Here the people could stand it no longer and complained of the long voyage, but the admiral cheered them as best he could, holding out good hope of the advantages they would have. He added that it was useless to complain. He had come to the Indies and so had to continue until he found them with the help of our Lord.
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at VCYAmerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Friends, continue to be praying for those that have been impacted through the recent hurricanes, now Hurricane Milton as well. Some affiliates of VCY America have been right in its path, and I know that your prayers are appreciated in the aftermath, the cleanup. Some loss of life has taken place there as well. As we begin today, we would like to also welcome brand new listeners to Crosstalk. Listening over KVPJ 92.9, servicing the Mason City, Iowa area, and licensed to Rockford there, but Mason City listeners, so good to have you with us, 92.9 on the radio dial. I also just want to take a moment to thank Dalton Windsor for putting together the two-day series that we had with Gary Kah, The Globalist Agenda Exposed. I mean, it's critical information as he spoke out not only to many issues concerning this election, but also the devastating impacts of the Summit of the Future and the Pact of the Future. And we shared even in our recent interview with Alex Newman, this puts global governance on steroids. And I mean, in the words of the UN Secretary General, they're turbocharging Agenda 2030. Well, according to our guest today, the American Planning Association is the premier planning group operating across this nation, and they make their plans and efforts sound like they are coming from the local level, but it falls right into the playbook of the United Nations. Well, a man that's been following all of this for decades is with us today. His name is Tom DeWeese, president of American Policy Center. Tom is one of the nation's leading advocates of individual freedom, free enterprise, private property rights, personal privacy, back to basics education, and American sovereignty and independence, and protecting our constitutionally guaranteed rights. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. I always enjoy being with you.
Well, you were once accused, Tom, of being a conspiracy theorist when you started talking about Agenda 21, and there are many things being done by planners in secrecy, but now, Tom, those are in broad daylight, and it's all moving at what seems like lightning speed. What is the genesis of all of this?
Well, when you take Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Green New Deal, the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, they're all the same thing. And they're all, the aim is control, and they mean global control. And they are focusing on our national sovereignty and our independence and our ability to, live our lives as we choose. They've made this excuse that, well, this is what causes wars, and this is what creates, the environmental crisis and all of that, because these countries aren't following good plans, and so we're better to make sure they do all that. So we're in charge at the top, and we'll make sure everybody follows those regulations. Mm-hmm. And what it really means is it's global control, global governance.
It really is, and it is all about control. And Tom, actually, you're with us here to give us a warning about the American Planning Association, and not just a warning, but we're also going to talk about how individuals are effectively challenging this as well. And Tom, I was just looking back in some of our records, and you and I discussed the American Planning Association on a crosstalk back in 2018, and you've been warning about them a very long time. Who exactly is this American Planning Association?
Well, they are part of the Planners Network, and which is officially run by something called Organization of Progressive Planners. These planners all over in every community in the country, we now have planners. The idea is we're going to put a comprehensive plan together for our community to make sure we have controlled growth for the future. It's not just willy-nilly going out of control this way or that way. We're going to have a plan for everything. And what really is happening is you've got these non-governmental organizations that are pushing all these different programs, and the American Planning Association is the premier one doing that. They're the ones that they've been around for a long time. They used to help communities put some plans together, but local control, city councils, county commissions in charge. But what they're doing now with these NGOs in the background is that they are moving forward with these plans that are putting the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 plans in place. And, of course, everything they're doing is based on environmental control. And there's a reason for that. The reason that they always continue to push, no matter how much science we can prove that it isn't factual, but they continue to push the environment issue because the environment doesn't recognize international boundaries or government boundaries. So that's your boundaries of your country, boundaries of your state, your county, your city, and your backyard. If the environment is going through that, which of course it is, then this gives us the control to dictate what happens on that property. You know,
Tom, many of their ideas, they're just popping up on the city boards, the county boards, planning commissions, et cetera, here across the country. They seem to want to give the persona that these are just local initiatives, not interconnected with anything else, just locally based. But that's not the case, is it?
Not at all, and it's just amazing because as we look at their documents and so forth, they're right out of. They use the same language of Agenda 21. If you look on the website, the plannersnetwork.org, and they have a statement of principles, and they say this: we study, teach, practice, and fight for a form of planning that is transformative and anti-racist, geared toward the full realization of human rights, dignity, and spatial justice. We seek public and social responsibility for meeting these needs because the private market was never designed to do so.
Right.
How much clearer can you get? And I love because in the next line that they use in it is, we want progress away from racial capitalism, neocolonialism, and toward toward abolition and decolonization, away from environmental catastrophe, and toward a climate justice, away from patriarchy and toward feminist liberation, away from status quo and toward freedom.
What does feminist liberation have to do with how we plan our cities?
Exactly.
My. Tom, I mean, this is really about redistribution of wealth. That's part of it, isn't it?
Redistribution of wealth is literally at the root of almost all of these policies. And they have this attitude that if you have more than you need, then you need to share it with everyone else. We're all in this together, and we're all going to be equal. And what it all leads to is, poverty programs are one of the big things they use on that. People are very charitable. People do want to help other people who are under trouble and so forth, and they use that emotion in us to keep preaching this thing of we're going to eradicate poverty. The Millennium Project of the United Nations from 2000 said they were going to eradicate poverty by 2015, and the whole thing was using redistribution of wealth. What you end up with there, and all these programs, we have more poverty today than we've ever had before, and they never, ever address why people are poor. They just take from others who are producing and continue to feed. They give it to a poor person today, tomorrow they need some more. And everybody becomes equally poor.
Well, all I'm hearing is the word equity come through this time, and we are hearing Kamala Harris over and over and over and over again talk about how we need to have equity, that people are coming from, different backgrounds, and some have more than others at some point, so we have to make it all equitable for one another.
Yeah, and one of the big programs they're using right now to put that in place is first of all, they've declared a crisis. We have a housing crisis. Mm-hmm. We have all these people who don't have a home to live in. And now we take a look at the community and how it's developed. And here's these neighborhoods with single-family homes in them that take up room for backyards and so forth. And there's only like four people maybe living in one of those homes. Well, golly, we have people who desperately need housing. We could take over those neighborhoods, build high-rise apartments in there, put Section 8 housing in there. We could, right there where 4 people are living, we could put 100 families. We have a housing crisis. This is the argument that's being used all over the country, and now they're coming in with massive high-rise apartment buildings and so forth. And what happens when they do that, in these single-family neighborhoods, the property value of that single-family home starts to deteriorate, starts to go down. And now we're finding that people who are trying to get out of these neighborhoods now and sell the home at a much reduced rate, they've lost their equity in it, and BlackRock comes in and buys up those homes and so forth at a song, and now they develop the major stack and pack neighborhoods.
Yeah. So we got redistribution of wealth with this word equity. Social justice also part of it too, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the arguments they're using in doing this, and the NAACP did this in Baltimore a few years ago, as they filed suit, and they're saying, well, with public housing, government housing, they're all put in the same area, and that creates ghettos. So here are people living in these nicer neighborhoods, and they've got higher incomes, and they've got better jobs, and they're closer to schools, and they're closer to business, and everybody should have the right to be there. So we're going to move all that into those neighborhoods, and everybody's going to be much better off that way.
And it's not only social justice, but also a term called social engineering.
Absolutely. What do you call it when they start determining how you're going to live and what rules you're going to follow? They have decided it from the top and dictating to you what you're going to think, how you're going to think. Actually, there was several years ago I reported on a UN organization that had come up with what they called globally acceptable truth. In other words, here's what you're allowed to think. Anything beyond this is criminal thought.
Tom DeWeese is with us today, president of American Policy Center. Tom, I know we're just going to get into this now here before the break, but what is their methodology? How are they making their inroads? What methods are they using?
One of the main things they use, they used what's called the Delphi technique or consensus, where they get people to going to meetings and directing them into a certain way to think a certain way, and the way they ask the questions, they get people to answer in a positive way. You're for planning. Oh, wonderful! The community has accepted this, and we're just going to move forward with what the community wants.
Well, and they actually go about doing their surveys and questions, making people think that everybody's on board with them, but they manipulate the words in their questions. And I know in a recent piece you wrote, you actually bring about 10 real questions planners should ask the public, because the public is clueless. They use different buzzwords that the public really doesn't know what they're asking.
Yeah, if you hold up a sign, a photograph of a beautiful downtown, how it's going to look in the community, but here's how it looks now. It's an older, deteriorated neighborhood. Which one would you rather have in your community? Well, I'd like the pretty one, please. You're in favor of planning. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
And this is, it's just manipulation. And they will say, people are for planning, so it's our job to put this together.
Yeah. Well, friends, a lot of manipulation is going on with the questions that are being asked, and we're going to develop this further in our next segment. Tom DeWeese is with us today from American Policy Center, and talking about, controlling the population through the American Planning Association. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, anything new found in outer space recently?
Chris, there's always something new. Recently, the Hubble telescope located several giant gaseous planets orbiting around burned-out stars. Now, gaseous planets are not strange. Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, they're all large and gaseous, so that's not a problem. What is a problem is that the Big Bang Theory dates these at 12.7 billion years old. This, according to the theory, is much too soon after the Big Bang to have formed the heavy elements which are present. They just don't know what they're going to do. Well, I don't know what they're going to do either, but I do know what they should do. They should give up the Big Bang Theory because it's wrong. It doesn't fit the evidence. There's got to be a better way. And there is such a way. It's found back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. Our guest today is Tom DeWeese, president of American Policy Center, and he's really been following and studying and warning about the American Planning Association, but not just their tactics, but how citizens are engaging and countering what they're doing. But we need to first understand what it is that they are doing, Tom, and many of them are manipulating questions, taking these surveys, and actually saying, well, the people are with us, therefore we need to do this. And they'll come, with very compelling statistics before, local municipalities to make their plan look like it needs to be approved, and yet there is the twisting of terms. There is the deception that is going on. I mean, it's so true in so many of these things that are being advanced. But you're saying, hey, let's come clean on this, and there are some questions they really should be asking the public, but in plain sight.
Well, yes, because as I said, they ask these questions to make it sound like they're basically the people running these consensus meetings are trained in organizing and pushing people in a certain direction. And so they ask these questions in a way, and if you question it while you're sitting in one of these meetings, they will start to target you. And they'll say things like, well, even Jim could understand this. It's like, you're an idiot, but,
right.
This is so simple. And so people get intimidated. And the other thing is the people who attend these meetings, probably 90% of the people there in those meetings are part of their bunch anyway. There's hardly any citizens there, but they will start putting out that the community decided that this is what we're going to do. And everything is just local. It's all just about local programs. But, I put together some real questions that they could ask, and I won't go through all 10 of them, but I'll give you 2 or 3 of them here. One of them is, if they would really ask the community, would they, for these kind of questions, would they really support planning? For example, how do the citizens feel about planning that forces taxpayers to pay for plug-in stations for electric cars that hardly anyone wants to use, for the specific purpose of eventually forcing people to buy electric cars? Do they still support planning if they did that? Another question, how do the citizens feel about planning that creates non-elected boards, councils, and regional governments to enforce their UN-inspired policies, which actually diminish, if not eliminate, the power of the local officials they elected, severely reducing citizens' input into the policies? Do they still support planning? These are the kind of questions that they should be asking the people in they're doing in the community, because this is the reality of what these programs are putting in place will do.
So why the secrecy? Why the manipulation?
Because the idea is to gain control. And people have, if you're having your property destroyed, your private property ownership destroyed, by putting these plans in place, or other things that happen in your community, your transportation use, your how you have to build your buildings, anything like that are going to cost you more money. What's the purpose of it? And if you start asking those kind of questions, they shut you up. And why? Because there is an agenda. I mean, I've been saying it for 35 years. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. As I said, Green New Deal, the Great Reset now is the newest way they're presenting it. This is control over your life with you having absolutely no ability to counter it. Did you vote on any of these things? Did anybody in the community vote on any of these things? No. And what we're finding is that local city councilmen, county commissioners, and even some state legislators have no clue of the root or the purpose of many of the plans they're putting in place. One of the things they're doing right now is racing to put wind and solar farms into the communities. And you go in. I've got activists I'm working with who are going to city council meetings, and they're asking questions on these things about them. And what about the farmers' property that they're putting this on? What about the conservation easements that they're having to sign in order to allow this to happen? What happens if it doesn't work or whatever? And they don't even have the slightest clue of what that question means.
Yeah.
And they're going ahead putting it in place.
And friends, when Tom talks about control, he's talking about control over all aspects of your life. I mean, energy is part of that, friends. Energy is there. We're talking food supply is also part of this. What you drive, how you drive, if you drive, where you live, how you live. I mean, everything that we're talking about, total control and domination. And friends, don't forget that this recent Summit of the Future was all about, and we heard from the attorney or from the U.S. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres talking about turbocharging Agenda 2030. That's the game plan here. Tom, you were just talking about these wind turbines and so forth, and just this past July, I mean, the federal government suspended the operations of a wind farm located off the coast of Massachusetts. Massive turbine fell apart, sending debris into the ocean. Local officials had to close nearby beaches. Earlier, there was at the Vineyard Winds developer reported a blade failure incident at the facility. Dispatching crews collecting debris surrounding waters and beaches in Nantucket, Massachusetts. I mean, on and on these incidents go. The blades that stop working and have to be dismantled, they have graveyards. You can't recycle this stuff. They can't reuse them. And we've got a real mess, especially when you have them going up in flames as well.
Exactly. We are told that we, in order to protect the environment, need to recycle our, soda cans and bottles and so forth, plastic and all of that. We've got to make sure, because we don't want to fill landfills, and that's damaging to the environment. But these massive blades, some of them are 300 yards long, and you ever see them in the trucks trying to transport them down the highway? Yes. And they are not degradable. They only last between 6 and 10 years, and for the most part. They need lots of oil to turn them. But we're not allowed to have oil.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get rid of that because that's damaging the environment. And they will explode. They will start burning and so forth. But and when they have to take, I mean, now we're putting up thousands and thousands and thousands of them across the country. And when those blades no longer are working, they have to replace that turbine. Then what happens to them? They are filling massive areas of landfills with them. The same thing is true about the solar panels. And what we're finding, I've got reports here, they're finding that these solar panels, when you've got thousands of them all in a row, and you've seen these pictures where you can't even see the edge of it, of the solar farm, it is starting to change the environment over the top of them. And it's leading to warming, and they are finding now that as it's changing that environment over them, that they are becoming magnets for hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that. What are we seeing across the country right now that we've never seen before? And yet they tell us that this is to protect the environment as they destroy it. Remember when tree huggers, the environmentalists, we called them tree huggers because you can't cut a tree down. That's a living thing. It's for the planet. They are cutting down millions of trees to put these solar farms in place, and the environmental movement says, oh, that's good for the environment. What?
Yeah. So energy is one of these aspects, and we could spend hours just talking about that. But, Tom, let's talk about another issue. We have seen our food prices skyrocket, and yet the Epoch Times just reported earlier this week that food, especially meat and poultry, could rise even further in 2025 when new EPA rules for meat processors are going into effect. Some meat processors are going to be put out of business by this, and they're anticipating that. These rules would establish tighter limitations for nitrogen released into the environment, limit phosphorus for the first time. New rules would establish pre-treatment standards for oil and grease, total suspended solids, and biochemical oxygen demands. The list just goes on, but we're told of 850 of some 5,000 facilities are going to be affected by these new rules from the EPA, the Biden-Harris EPA, and they're expecting at between 16 and 53 food processing plants to close. Prices are saying for beef, chicken, turkey, and pork are going to rise. And, Tom, this is all by design.
Yep. Go to the root of it. What is the agenda? We're going to stop eating beef. We're going to, the vegan diet, which is what we're, guided to. Of course, they keep telling us we're going to start eating bugs. And how many have you met anyone who says they're going to do that?
Right.
No way, I'm going to eat bugs. However, if they continue to manipulate the processing of our food, and free enterprise disappears, and you have certain corporations that are working with them to put this in place, and they will then offer, this is the products that are available. That is it. That is all you have to choose. Mm-hmm. That'll be the products of your food. It'll be the products of your cars. It'll be the products of other items that you buy. You will have no choice whatsoever. There will be no free enterprise in it. It'll be what they dictate they're going to give us, and that's how it'll end up happening.
So, friends, again, under the Biden-Harris administration, putting through these new EPA rules, they're anticipating they're expecting somewhere between 16 and 53 food processing plants to shut down. Won't be able to meet these standards. Although the big guys will be able to survive, but we're talking millions of pounds of food that are not going to be able to process, and so there's going to be backlog and less food. I mean, they're telling us meat prices are going to rise even further. And at the same time, Tom, I just saw the New American reporting there are climate activists that have sent letters to major U.S. banks insisting they immediately cease funding industrial livestock production, which they claim contributes to the alleged climate crisis. They fall under the umbrella organization Friends of the Earth, but this is another means of a tactic or pressure that they're trying to put on banks to stop funding the livestock production.
Just imagine the hypocrisy of it. You have they're focusing on fields of cattle and pigs standing out in the field eating grass, and just doing natural things. Back before we had those kind of farms and so forth, we had buffalo and other animals, deer and elk, and so forth, running wild and all of that in the same land. They weren't into creating environmental disaster, but somehow these cattle standing there are. But meanwhile, it is environmental correctness, protecting the environment, to cover it all with big plastic panels, for thousands and thousands of acres.
Right.
The hypocrisy of it, the idiocy of it is just beyond comprehension.
Friends, it's about control. And Tom, I did see, too, about the Daily Caller reporting in June, the U.S. subsidiary of a Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, its top executive given hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign cash to Democrats in recent years. Are we seeing the purchasing of political favors?
Of course. Absolutely. This is a global agenda. And the United States, first of all, is the target. As we mentioned earlier, everything they're doing here is redistribution of wealth. These policies are redistribution of American wealth. We're not helping other countries by taking our money and our industry and so forth, but it is damaging us from being as powerful and as strong to defend ourselves as we were.
So, friends, what can we do? We're going to take a break. Tom DeWeese will be discussing that in our next segment here. Stay with us. You're listening to Crosstalk, coming your way from the VCY America Network.
Imagine if you could change society's stance on abortion.
How do you feel about the issue of abortion?
I think in some situations it can be necessary.
So have you just changed your mind about abortion?
Yeah.
Would you ever vote for someone who was for the killing of children in the womb?
No.
I believe in someone's right to choose.
You're going to change your stance on it?
Yeah, it's definitely making me think, yeah.
What was the compelling question to change people's minds on abortion? From Ray Comfort comes the DVD 180, featuring street interviews in which people who were pro-abortion changed 180 degrees to pro-life.
So have you just changed your mind about abortion?
Yeah.
180 is available for a donation to VCY of just $5, 5 copies for a donation of $18, or 10 copies for a donation of $25. Call 1-800-729-9829. Ask for the DVD 180.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Tom DeWeese is our guest today. Tom is the president of American Policy Center. Please have something handy to write with, because we'll be giving his website and information on how you can take action on this. But, Tom, I do want to bring up one additional aspect to all of this, and you and I have discussed this before, but we cannot neglect it, and it's a matter of reducing the population control. I mean, you have long spoken of this push to reduce the world's population. LifeSiteNews.com reported recently, this past July, that the UN has claimed the predictions of population reduction offer a, quote, hopeful sign for the planet. And Tom, when I see reports from demographers, they are warning of a full-blown population collapse. I mean, more than half the world's countries now have fertility rates at below replacement level. That includes the United States. It includes the UK, includes Australia. Your comments on this aspect of population reduction?
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I first started fighting Agenda 21, I knew this was one of the main aspects of it, but I didn't talk about it very much, because I thought if I started telling people that they had plans to wipe out 5-6 billion people, I'd have enough trouble getting people to understand the threat to their property, and that would talk about giving me a tinfoil hat. That's I didn't talk about this, but you look at today, it is the very forefront of these policies, and you look at everything we're dealing with, breaking up the families. And of course, the whole issue that Democrats are running on right now is abortion rights, and cutting back on population. How many millions of babies have died, on that issue itself? Mm-hmm. And you get into the whole transgender thing, everything else. Yep. You're turning kids away from wanting to have families. You're making it more difficult for them to own homes and that sort of thing, so they stay single and don't try to create families. All of these things are designed to cut the population down, and they have debated among themselves, those who are pushing these programs inside the UN, the environmental organizations and stuff, about what the proper number should be. There have been some who some have advocated that the population shouldn't be more than 250 million people in the world. But they did settle on 1 billion.
1 billion, and we're over 8 billion at this particular time. Yeah. And Tom, it is, and let's not also neglect to mention, the matter of shots, vaccinations. We have seen one of the African nations that have come against Bill Gates. They're saying, we take your shots and our population, people cannot, get pregnant. They cannot have children. And I hear it over and over in my mind. We've heard the statements from Bill Gates. If we do a real good job with vaccinations, we will save lives and reduce the population at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing, Jim. They come right out and tell us what they really mean.
Yeah.
And, I'm not some genius that finds all this stuff. It's easy to find it. They say it very openly. Right. People don't believe it.
Tom, let's look at solutions to all this. We talked about the American Planning Association and so much of this. They bring all their graphs and charts and all their numbers in. We've done these surveys, and the people of the communities in these states, they really want us to go this direction. They want us to go about proper planning of this way. How can this be countered?
We have several different things we're doing. We put together a manual on for local activists to how to organize, and we have a whole section in there on how to bust up these facilitated meetings, and it can be done. We have to be there. That's the problem. People, from our point of view, one reason we want limited government is because we want government mostly out of our lives as possible. Obviously, government's important. We have to have it. I'm not an anarchist in any way, but it should be the representative of what the people want. The people vote on things and all this is happening now where that's all being taken away, and we need to fight back on that. And that's why I always advocate at the local level. First of all, I learned early on that sustainable development, which is behind all of these policies on the environment, cannot be imposed if private property rights are protected, because its whole purpose is to eliminate private property, and that becomes a major tool in all this. If we organize at the local level in our city councils, what I call building a freedom pod, being there and knowing the background, doing the research, knowing who you're up against, what the policies are, what the grant programs are the community has taken, where this comprehensive plan is going. If you are looking into that, if you're watching it, if you're there at those city council meetings, not one or two of you, but we need to have 20, 30 people organizing. I've got some people who are doing this effectively who have 100 people show up at city council meeting every single week. And before they started doing that, the city council just ignored them, paid no attention to what they were trying to say. This is what we have to be there. We have to be committed. Our lives are at stake. Our freedom is at stake. And if you sit back and just say, well, there's nothing we can do about this, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
But they are afraid of us learning this, because they know everything there. I talked about the environmental movement being hypocrites. All these forces there putting this in place, they know what they're doing, and they're afraid of us if we organize.
Friends, I can't tell you, in Wisconsin, where I'm speaking from right now, most of our local offices, like for aldermen and county board members, etc., are in our spring elections. And the news topic all the time is the little voter turnout during these elections, Tom. Sometimes 10, 15%, sometimes it's 20 or the low 20%. And it's just very few voters that are engaged in even knowing who is running for office, let alone attend meetings, but even who is running for office and could, don't show any care or concern as to who they're voting into these positions. And this local level is where so many of these things are happening.
Yeah, and even the smallest positions, the reason it exists is because it has some influence on what is happening in the community. But when was the last time that we paid any attention to judgeships? When was the last time that we paid any attention to who was on the election board?
Right.
Why are they there? If you go to the election board right now and try to talk to them about security in the ballots and all that, they're going to tell you, well, the state tells us. Then why are you here?
Right, exactly.
These are the questions we need to ask. And one of the things we found to be a very powerful weapon right now is being at these city council meetings and asking very specific questions. And one of them, I had right there in Minnesota, right next to you, I have a wonderful activist there who went, his community was going to, they already had one solar farm in the community, and they were going to create a second one. And at the meeting, the planners were jabbering on about all these policies, what we're going to do this for, and the people just weren't saying anything. He finally got the microphone, and he asked him one question. What benefit to the community was the first solar farm? They just looked at them. They couldn't answer the question.
My.
This is the kind of thing that we're starting to teach people to do, is to ask these questions. I have another activist out in California whose community was going to put together another green program. He put together what he called the 244 plan. 244 questions. some of them about the very basics of them. The whole thing, the premise was on the environmental situation, asking very specific questions. What's the real science behind this? They couldn't answer a single question on this plan.
Yeah. Tom, give us your website.
It's AmericanPolicy.org. And I want to ask you, we have about a 30-year archive of articles on all of these kind of things. We got a whole lot of new ones that have come out. We've got our handbook on there. But I would like to ask people to sign up there to get on our list for our emails. And we'll send out lots of updates of information, new articles, things like that to keep you informed.
And how do they sign up?
It's right there on the website.
Okay.
Sign up on there, yeah.
AmericanPolicy.org, AmericanPolicy.org. Friends, let's open our phone lines. No doubt you've got a question for Tom or a brief comment. Our number, 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. And so many of these things are just being implemented on the local level. Friends, right in your city halls, these things are going on, and there's nobody there to object to what's taking place. A lot of people don't even know what's going on, and this is something that Tom is emphasizing here: the need to be vigilant as to what's going on. Most of your cities are going to have interactive websites where you can even put in to be notified when there are upcoming meetings that are taking place, when there are going to be times which the public can speak up on different issues. But, Tom, it's really critical to get engaged on the local level, the municipality, the county level, and then certainly in the states as well, because we look at this monstrous conglomeration called the United Nations, and they're putting their ugly tentacles all around this world, and people have the opportunity to say, not in my backyard.
They do. And you know what? Around the world, where some of these countries have moved quicker than we have on a lot of these environmental issues and so forth and found absolute disaster, England, France, other ones, the elections over there were a shock this year because people were standing up finally saying no. Argentina has elected a new president who is challenging these guys, standing up to them. We got a chance to push back on this and watch it crumble.
Friends, again, our number to Crosstalk here is 800-733-9829. We're going to begin with Roger calling in from Marble, Minnesota. Roger, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm thinking about the land grab, and, once we get put into apartments and stuff like that, that's just like herding cattle into a barn, and that really limits what freedoms we have, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just take a look at it. What can they do when they have moved people into these high-rises, all centered as close to the center of town as they can get them? They now control your transportation choices. They control your energy use in your apartment there. They can, they put the smart meters on. They can control your thermostat, and they can control where you go, what you eat, all that. The people who live in the rural areas are a danger to them because they're much more independent, and they've got to stop that. And that's why you're seeing them move those people off those farms and as best they can and move them into the cities.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the people in China during COVID, and when they put all those people in those high-rise apartments, they were crying out because they couldn't get out.
Excellent example.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. The high-rises that they have built there are just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, thank you, Roger, for the call. And Tom, so sad to see people yelling, calling out from their apartments and from their balconies. They needed food, and the deaf ear was given toward them. And all we got to do is lock those bottom doors, and people in those high-rises are not going to be able to have access to get out to, the areas of vital need.
Yep, there you go.
And friends, it's happening all over, and you see the proliferation of building that is going on across this country, even right now. Tom DeWeese is with us today. We're going to take a quick break. Right back to more of your phone calls. His website, AmericanPolicy.org, and friends, you can sign up. Just go to his website, sign up for his email alerts and releases that are coming out, so you can be informed on these critical issues. That's AmericanPolicy.org. We are back in 1 minute. This is Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewtube.com. This week, there was a very important case before the U.S. Supreme Court. The ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, is arguing a new rule known as readily convertible. And what it means is if you could readily convert your semi-automatic AR-15 into a machine gun, it should be confiscated. If you could take your shotgun and have a short barrel put on, even cut it off and make it a short barrel, it should be confiscated. Same thing with your rifle. So before the U.S. Supreme Court today, there were gun rights attorneys arguing that this new readily convertible test would wreak havoc on our Second Amendment rights. It's time for Christians, pastors, Americans to understand we have God-given rights of self-defense. It's in the Bible. Only a wicked government seeks to disarm its people so they can carry out their brutality and murder. There is a biblical worldview to be applied here. Let's do it.
Friends, you've got opportunity there on a local level in your communities to make a difference here for your city and for your state, for your nation, by saying no to United Nations. Tom, October 24th, just a couple of weeks away, it's United Nations Day. You're pushing for something else.
Yes, I am. I am calling for all of us to, on October 24th, to declare Exit United Nations Day. And we can do this by having small, very peaceful rallies in your community, or you can even just wear a little sticker on your shirt pocket or something that says Exit UN Day. You can put signs in your yard. You can put truckers could put signs on their trucks as they drive down the highway and say Exit United Nations Day. I want to take the day that has been set aside to honor the United Nations, and I want to make it the most horrible day they have all year. If we stand up and start shouting to get us out of the United Nations.
And would you echo that by making a call to your congressmen and senators, Tom? Is that a good idea as well?
Absolutely. And there's a bill before Congress right now that it's called the Senate. It's called the Defund Act, which stands for Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act, that Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Chip Roy put in. It's not going to pass in this Congress, but we are putting out an appeal to ask them to make sure they reintroduce it next year, and we'll build support for it.
Let's go to David in northern Wisconsin. David, you're on the air. Hello, David, you're on the air.
Hello?
You're on the air.
Oh, I took a drive yesterday in northern Wisconsin, and it occurred to me as I was driving through about 75 miles worth of forest that we could put a number of major American cities in just a chunk of northern Wisconsin. It's all unpopulated, it's all forested. And we're always hearing that there's not enough room and space for the people that we have. I don't know how far off the beam I am, but it seemed like you could put a lot of cities there.
Yeah, we're not. Thank you for the call, Tom. We're not lacking land here in the United States at all.
No, not at all, and I mean he's absolutely observing it correctly. I have been on interviews where environmentalists have called in and talking about the overpopulation, and I said, "Have you ever been in an airplane? Look down.
Yeah.
We got huge amounts of land here, and now we have what Biden is calling the 30 by 30, which really what they're working is to lock away 50% of all the land in this nation where human activity is not allowed.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to Ev in Ames, Iowa. Ev, you're on the air.
Yes. You mentioned so many different groups like Biden, Harris does this, and another group does that, and they do this and they do that. I'm just wondering, is there any coordination of all these groups, like a little pamphlet or something, so we know who is who?
Yeah. Matter of fact, Tom, your article that you have on your website on this topic really ties the knot together on these.
Oh, yeah, they are all tied together. There are 20,000 non-governmental organizations in the world. You got the Nature Conservancy and the Sierra Club, the World Wildlife Fund, ICLEI. Those are some of the biggest ones. But every single policy has one of these NGOs behind it. It could just be bike lanes in your community or building codes, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They are experts at how to put that together. They know how to put sample legislation together. They know what grants to go for because they help write the grants, and they are totally coordinated in this. And a lot of them, at the World Economic Forum, they go to their meetings and they help train them and how to move forward with the agenda. They absolutely are working together.
If you go to AmericanPolicy.org, that's AmericanPolicy.org, you'll see this article near the top of his articles, what city planners are really planning and how to challenge it. You'll see the names of various groups. You'll see a lot of information we talked about today, and that will be a great help to you. But you just continue to explore on his site, and you'll see much more that comes forth. We've got Dale Marie from Florida calling. You're on the air.
Yes, I live here in the Panhandle of Florida, a real conservative area, and we have just hundreds of acres of solar panels going up everywhere.
Yeah.
I just don't get it, especially in this area. And we have huge apartment complexes, 3 stories going up everywhere, too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, thank you. Tom, that's common across the country, isn't it?
Absolutely. What you're seeing is the results of all these things we're talking about. Now, Florida being devastated by this hurricane and also into North Carolina and so forth, what they'll do as they begin to rebuild those areas, they'll begin to put these policies in place. They will start. They did it in New Orleans when they had the big hurricane there a few years ago. Whole neighborhoods that were wiped out. All of a sudden, when they rebuilt them, they rebuilt them with the what they call smart growth plans, the high rises. And
Hawaii as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everywhere. That you begin to wonder. Is this help? Is this planned to pull all this together? But they certainly use it. They never let a tragedy go to waste.
Thank you for the call. Scott in Clarksburg, West Virginia, you're on the air.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you think that the brainwashed half of America and minorities view these policy planners as a vehicle to achieve reparations for the landed slave trade?
Well, I don't know about that, but equity is a big part of it, Tom.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's all part of the agenda.
Yeah.
And so they use the environment. As I said earlier, the reason they use the environment is because that is the way they break down political or government barriers, and because the environment doesn't recognize those. So they use that.
We're in our final minute here. Let's go to Lily in Tucson, Arizona. You're on the air.
Thank you. I'm grateful that you guys are exposing the tentacles of all of this in so-called environmentalism, and also giving us ways to counteract. But one of the things that really rings true, and this is, 40 years ago, God delivered me from the occult and all of the spiritualism behind it. And I believe that a lot of the people that are so intense, zealous for all of this, is that it really is Earth worship or Mother Earth worship, and it's called Gaia in the most recent form.
Tell you what, we're down to 5 seconds. A quick comment there, Tom.
Absolutely true. That it is about they use worship of the earth as a concept to get people to follow it. Yes.
Lily, thanks for raising that. I wish we had more time, but our closing music is already airing. Thank you for your call, but you're right on with your comment there. Thank you. Tom DeWeese with us today. His website, AmericanPolicy.org. Folks, you can download the article there. Look at his other things there, too. Sign up for his newsletter there. Tom, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, my pleasure, always. Thank you.
And friends, thank you for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.